I'm not trying to push you to my Patreon, but I did write a whole thing about this. It's a free post, so it's not like you'd have to pay for it. This is gonna kind of gross some people out, but like, here's the true story of what you're doing when you're trying to store food. From the moment food is picked, harvested, slaughtered, you are in a race against the degrading of nutrition and the introduction of like bacteria or just the eroding of the structure of the food. A dried black bean 10 years from now can absolutely be boiled and turned into soup and it won't kill you, but it also won't have any nutritional value. Now, if you're hungry, you're not going to care that the soup doesn't have any nutritional value. If you're hungry, you're probably already on the edge of scurvy. So, like, a full belly will feel good. You're not going to really care about the lack of nutrition. But we as human beings need nutrition, which is why in preserving our foods, we're also trying to preserve the nutrition of that food. Although with a rise of scurvy and rickets in this country and globally, even with fresh foods, they're just so lacking in nutritional value, we've literally brought back scurvy and rickets. When you are storing food, you are storing it, in our current circumstances, to get ahead of price surges or shortages, or in some cases just because it's on sale and you're trying to enjoy the best value for the food. How you store it depends on how long you want to store it. In its original packaging on your shelf for a month or two, leave it in the original packaging. If you want it to last a year, if you want it to last 5 years, if you want to last 25 years, you have to do different things to make it last with nutritional value. The packaging you get products in from the store are not intended for long-term storage. It's meant to get something from point A to point B so you can buy it. The plastic bags on grains and rice are not a long-term storage solution. It was literally just a container from point A to point B. When you are storing food, you are trying to prevent air, water, heat/sunlight, vermin/insect. Ideally, food is stored in a cool environment with zero oxygen, zero moisture, and away from things with multiple legs or dominant front teeth. If you're going to store rice for 2 months, pick the coolest cabinet in your room or in your house and store it there. The last thing you want to do is put it in the cabinet like right above the stove where it's going to be hottest. Heat is an enemy. Short term, the packaging it came in from the grocery store, just put that packaging in the freezer for a day or two to kill off anything that might have come with that packaging. For a month, fine. In the heated cabinet above your stove. It's going to lose nutritional value, but not enough that you would notice. You want to keep it for 3 months, put it in the freezer, and then put it in the coolest cabinet in your kitchen. You want to store it for a year, put it in the freezer, then take it out, and then one of your used glass pasta jars, wash it, clean it, dry it, take the rice out of the plastic bag, put it in the pasta jar, and close it, and put it in that cool cabinet. Glass over plastic is preferred just because rats and mice. A plastic bag on a bag of rice isn't even going to stop them. They'll barely even notice it while they're eating. People think like, oh, those like cheap plastic kind of containers, that I get from the Dollar Tree kind of stuff, that'll stop them. Think of those like the Italian shower, like splashing a little cologne on your unwashed body. To a rodent with a high sense of smell, they can still very much smell the unwashed under the cologne. If you've got a pantry full of food sitting in plastic containers, rodents can smell it just as well as if it was in a plastic bag. They're still going to smell it if it's in a glass jar, but they're not going to be able to access it in a glass jar. They could theoretically figure out how to push it off the shelf, but if we've gotten to that point, we have other problems. For long-term storage, you want to take the oxygen and the moisture away from your food. So you want to put it in something like a glass container or a Mylar bag, and you want to put an oxygen absorber in with it. And then you want to seal it either through one of those mason jar like air extractors, through a canning process, or kind of like sealing up a Mylar bag with either the official Mylar bag sealer, or I've seen a lot of people use like a hair straightener to seal the bag. The longest possible term storage is freeze drying for 25 years. The longest you can kind of dry store anything is 3 to 5 years. It's specific to the food. It's specific to like, is it the original food or is it like a refried dehydrated bean paste? Won't last as long as a dried bean kind of thing. Like the more you futz with the food, the less time it can stay shelf stable. You can get Mylar bags, but just understand what you're getting into with Mylar bags. Like, the longer you want to store something, the more effort you're going to have to put into storing it. Just buying a box of Captain Crunch and putting it on a shelf in your basement and assuming it's going to last for 10 years, it's not going to. Basically, what I'm saying is the longer you want to store food, consider it like getting into a long-term relationship. You're going to have to care for it. If your goal is to just have a full belly in 10 years, leave it in its original packaging, leave it on the shelf, it's going to be fine. As long as you freeze it first, because you really don't want weevils or insects. But if you're looking to invest long-term, there are phases. Whole coffee beans last longer than ground coffee beans. Wheat berries last longer than flour. All of them, even in the most perfect of conditions, will degrade on a nutritional level. Even if they look exactly the same 10 years later, they have no nutritional value. It will fill your stomach. And look, in really tough times, having a full stomach, people have eaten grass and dirt because, as humans, you can only go so long with that gnawing feeling in your stomach before you would just do anything to get that sensation to go away. But it's about preserving the nutrition as much as the full belly feeling. But also when it comes to things like canned meat, 10 years later you should not be opening a jar of canned stew and eating it. Like, the moister something is, the less time you should keep it around. It might not kill you, but you can't smell or taste botulism, and that's really what you're trying to avoid with long-term food storage for wet products, is botulism. There are exceptions for things like salt-cured fish or wine, but that's because they've been through a fermentation process. But even wine can turn. It can turn into vinegar, which isn't going to kill you, but if you're trying to sit down to a nice glass of Merlot and end up with a nice glass of balsamic vinegar, emotionally it's going to hurt you. I mean, you might get a nice salad out of it, but that's not what you were planning to do with your evening. But seriously, keep your food away from heat, moisture, air as much as possible. The worst kitchen design in the world is where you keep products that degrade like right above the heat source of your home. Like the herbs that get put on the top of the stove. You kill those in under a month. My garlic powder isn't really strong. I put so much in. Yeah, because your garlic powder has lost all of its value. It's just maintained its scent. The wine racks above the fridge, don't do that. You're literally heating your wine all day, every day from the heat that comes from the back of the refrigerator. All those vitamin shops that put vitamin bottles in the front window display, don't buy those vitamins. It's kind of a long explanation, but the short answer is it depends on how long you want to keep it, but especially with grains and beans and flours, toss them in the freezer for a day or two. You'll thank me later.